Genshin Impact is a wondrous game. With an ever-growing world and stylish art design, it's able to capture the imagination of players. Whether you enjoy the world, story, or gameplay, one aspect that keeps players coming back to the game are the amazing characters. So I'm Darcblade with a character guide to the Geo Traveler in Genshin Impact. In this guide we will briefly cover the basic lore of the character, their moves, abilities, weapon options, stat priorities and artifact builds. Remember though that these builds are aimed at free to play and low spender players, so they will mainly feature characters as if they were Constellation level 0 with 4-star weaponry. Of course there are a few exceptions to that rule, but for the most part we're looking at the free to play options. The Geo Traveler is a 5-star sword wielding Geo character, and is free to every player as he or she is the main protagonist of the game. The Traveler, sometimes referred to as the twins, or the MC as in main character, are from another world. Whilst travelling over to that, they were separated from their kin and now must embark on a journey through the world of Genshin Impact to find their missing sibling. After taking on the challenges of Mondstadt, the Traveller ventured into Liyue, home of the Geo Archon, to which they resonated with the Statue of the Seven there, and they gained the power of Geo. With the power of stone in their hand, they then set out to find the Geo Archon to see if he had any answers for them. During this time they took on many challenges in Liyue, getting to know the civilization and its many wondrous characters. From this the Traveller was able to learn more and grow as a character, making them wiser and stronger. Now every character in Genshin Impact has access to various talents. These are divided into combat talents and passive talents. Combat talents are your moves and abilities that you perform whilst in a fight, and passive talents are mechanics that work in the background of the character. When it comes to the Geo Traveler's combat talents, their first is normal attacks, foreign rock blade. This, if you press the attack button, will allow you to perform a 5-hit combo of rapid strikes with your sword. Alternatively, you can hold down the attack button, to which you'll consume a small amount of stamina to unleash a 2 rapid sword strike ahead of you, knocking opponents back. Finally, you are also able to perform a plunging attack, which is done by pressing the attack button whilst in mid-air, which will cause the Geo Traveler to plummet towards the ground, damaging opponents in an AoE around them. The next combat talent is STARFELL Sword, which is your elemental skill. When used, the Geo Traveler will disgorge a meteorite from the depths of the earth, dealing AoE geo damage and causing the meteorite to become a geo construct. This can be climbed and used to block attacks. Normally when you tap the ability, the meteorite will appear just in front of the Geo Traveler, but you can also hold down the skill button so you can manually position where the meteorite will erupt from. The next combat talent is Wake of Earth, which is your elemental burst. When used, the Geo Traveler will cause multiple shockwave earthquakes around them. This will deal AoE geo damage per shockwave as well. On top of that, it will also launch weaker opponents away from you. Unfortunately, this sometimes knocks the weaker opponents outside of the shockwave field, but allows for a little bit of crowd control, and on top of that, stone walls are erected around the edge of the shockwaves. This can hinder enemies' movement and block attacks against the Traveler. Larger foes won't be launched by this attack unfortunately, but it means that they take the full amount of damage from the shockwaves as they will be hit by every shockwave instead of being knocked out of its radius. Last note that the stone walls created are considered geoconstructs, so work well with other characters who utilise geoconstructs when they're on the field. Anyway, those are the combat talents available to the Geo Traveler. Let's move on to the passive talents. Now there are 2 here. First of all is Shattered DARKROCK. This reduces the STARFELL sword, so your elemental skills cool down by 2 seconds, allowing you to use it a little bit more often. And the other passive talent is FRENZIED ROCKSLIDE. When you perform your normal attack combo on the final hit, you'll trigger an attack that deals 60% of your attack as AoE geo damage. So it allows your normal attacks to deal geo damage should you perform the full combo. But anyway, let's move away from the various talents available to the Geo Traveler and talk about the constellations. Now normally these guides wouldn't really go into the constellations as they mainly look at characters as if they're constellation level 0. However, with the Geo Traveler, as they are the main character of the game, you can easily get all their constellations unlocked. And there are a few we need to cover here. First of all is Invincible Stonewall, which is constellation level 1. Party members within the radius of Wake of Earth, so your elemental burst, have their crit rate increased by 10% and also have increased resistance against interruption. This allows the Geo Traveler to provide a support role of sorts when it comes to his elemental burst. Constellation level 2 is okay. Basically, when a meteorite created by your elemental skill is destroyed, it will explode, dealing additional AoE geo damage equal to the amount of damage dealt by your STARFELL sword. Constellation level 4 is also kind of useful. The shockwave triggered by Wake of Earth, so your elemental burst, regenerates 5 energy for every opponent hit, for a maximum of 25% energy regenerated in this manner. which means the more opponents are within your AoE of your elemental burst, the quicker you'll be able to use your elemental burst again. And then finally is Constellation level 6, Everlasting Boulder. This increases the duration of which the walls created by Wake of Earth and the STARFELL Sword meteorites remain on the field, which means that these geoconstructs remaining on the field for longer can be useful when it comes to defending certain objectives or when used in unison with other characters who benefit from geoconstructs on the field. But anyway, let's move on to the next section where we talk about the various builds that I like to use for the Geo Traveller. Now the first build is the general purpose build. This is kind of an all-rounder build that is kind of a jack of all trades build in all honesty. But normally the Traveller is a jack of all trades character, so it kind of works in some respects. So first of all, when it comes to the weaponry, I'd advise going for a weapon that has either crit rate, crit damage or attack percentage on it. Suggestions could be the Black Sword if you have the Battle Pass. This will give us a crit rate increase as well as increase the damage of our normal and charged attacks and heal us when our attacks crit. Alternatively, the Sword of Ascension is an okay option if you're on PlayStation, which gives us an attack increase, and on top of that, our charged and normal attacks grant us a 50% chance to deal 200% attack damage in a small AoE, as well as increase our attack by a small amount as well. Other options could be the Flute, which again increases our attack, and on top of that, after hitting an opponent with normal and charged attacks for a certain amount of time, will trigger a damaging AoE attack. Or you could go with the Aninoma Kageuchi, which is the Inazuma craftable sword, which again gives us an attack increase, and on top of that, after using an elemental skill, you'll gain 1 succession seed, which can stack up to 3 times, after which using elemental burst will consume all of these seeds and regenerate energy for the Geo Traveller. Finally, for a 3-star option, the Harbinger of Dawn is always nice, which gives us increased crit damage, and so long as we can keep our HP above 90%, it will also give us increased critical rate. Now, as for the artifacts, there are a lot of options here, but as this is a general purpose build, I'm going to go for 2 pieces of the Archaic Petra set, which will give us increased geo damage, and 2 pieces of the Gladiator's Finale, which gives us an increased attack percentage. You can, if you want to, drop the 2 pieces of the Gladiator set if you wanted to. If you wanted more energy recharge, you could use something like the Emblem of Severed Fates, which for wearing 2 pieces will give us increased energy recharge, or even go with 2 pieces of the Noblesse Oblige, which will increase our elemental burst damage by 20%. There are a lot of options here, but the Archaic Petra combined with the Gladiator's Finale are normally my fallback options for the all-round Geo Traveller build. As for the stats on them though, when it comes to the sands, you'll want to go for attack percentage. As for the goblet, you want to go for geo damage bonus, and then finally for the circlet, you'll either want to go for critical rate or critical damage. As for the substats, crit rate and crit damage are optimal, followed by attack and then energy recharge. Now, as for the talent priorities, there is a lot of options here in all honesty. Normally, I'd advise going for Wake of Earth first, which is your elemental burst, followed by STARFELL Sword, which is your elemental skill, and then your normal attacks. However, if you are using the character as a more of a main DPSer, you want to increase the normal attacks a little bit more. But regardless, like I said, this is a jack of all trades build for the Geo Traveller, allowing him or her to perform multiple roles, whether as a sub DPS, main DPS, whatever. This build works perfectly fine and will tide you over until you get a stronger main DPS character. Which brings us on to the next build, which is the Support Geo Traveller build. This build is all about supporting a team. Thanks to Constellation level 1, which increases the critical rate of party members within the AoE of your elemental burst, it means that this build is going to be focused on energy recharge and buffs around using our elemental burst. So, when it comes to the weaponry, you want to go for an energy recharge weapon mainly here, so something like the Festering Desire would be good, which increases our energy recharge, and on top of that increases our elemental skill damage by 32% and potentially our elemental skill crit by 12%. Alternatives would be the Favonius Sword, which again gives us an energy recharge percentage, and critical hits will restore elemental particles to us. Or alternatively, you could go for the Sacrificial Sword, which again gives us energy recharge and potentially allows us to use our elemental skill twice in a row. Now, as for the artifacts, there are 2 we need to talk about. First of all, is going for 4 pieces of the Noblesse Oblige set. The Noblesse Oblige set, for wearing 2 pieces, will increase our elemental burst damage by 20%, and on top of that, using an elemental burst will increase all party members' attack by 20% for 12 seconds. So being able to use our elemental burst often will not only provide that critical rate increase for our party, but also provide them with a nice attack buff as well. An alternative could be using 4 pieces of the Archaic Petra set if you so wish, which will grant us a Geo damage bonus, and when the Geo Traveler picks up a crystallized shard, which is obtained by performing elemental reactions using the Geo element, all party members will gain 35% damage bonus for the element of the shard picked up. This can work well when using teams that have a lot of elemental characters in them, but is a little bit finicky, as you need the Geo Traveler to pick up the elemental shard in order to get the elemental damage bonus. Regardless, this is an alternative if you don't want to use the Noblesse Oblige set, or you already have a team member who is using it in your party. Now, as for the stats on these, first of all, when it comes to your sands, you'll want to go for energy recharge. As for your goblets, you want to go for Geo damage, and then for your circlet, you want to go for crit rate or crit damage. As for the substats, energy recharge is optimal, followed by crit rate and crit damage, and then attack. And finally, as for the talents, you'll want to go for Wake of Earth first, followed by STARFELL Sword, the elemental skill, and then your normal attacks. This gives you a nice support build for the Geo Traveler, able to provide a crit rate buff to your team, as well as a potential damage increase through either the Noblesse Oblige set or the Archaic Petra set. But what if you're going through the game for the first time and you want a newcomer friendly build? Well, personally I'd focus on a kind of jack of all trades build, so I would use 2 pieces of the Berserker set, which will increase our crit rate a little bit, combined with 2 pieces of the lower level Gladiator sets, which provides us an attack increase. Nice and simple. But every character out there in Genshin Impact is not perfect. Whether you're 4-star or 5-star, they all come with pros and cons. When it comes to the Geo Traveler, is that he is a good source of Geo damage. If spec'd right, the Geo damage output from the Geo Traveler can be quite significant. His elemental skill allows a single hard-hitting Geo attack, whilst his elemental burst gives you a fairly large radius of constant Geo damage. The next pro is that his elemental burst with Constellation level 1 can be used to buff a team, giving them increased critical rates, allowing you to potentially use the Geo Traveler as a support. And then finally is that the Geo Traveler can create Geo constructs. These can be used to traverse the world, as well as solve various puzzles out there into that. But of course there are cons. The 2 biggest cons that come to mind when it comes to the Geo Traveler include the fact that his elemental burst will sometimes knock smaller and weaker opponents away, so they won't take the full amount of damage from his elemental burst. And on top of that, sometimes the meteors created through your elemental skill can result in you accidentally climbing them whilst you're in the middle of combat, which can be annoying. But regardless of the cons, the Geo Traveler's pros should not be overlooked. But every character is made stronger when they work in the right team composition. When it comes to the Geo Traveler, he works exceedingly well when paired with other Geo characters. This is thanks to the Geo Resonance. Geo Resonance increases your shield strength by 15%. Additionally, characters protected by a shield will have their damage dealt increased by 15%, and opponents will also have their Geo Resistance reduced by 20% as well. So using the Geo Traveler in unison with other Geo characters like Noelle, Albedo can definitely increase the damage dealt by the team. I would advise using him alongside another elemental character. One who uses Cryo, Electro, Pyro or Hydro is advisable, so you can create those elemental reactions and get those crystallized shards to create the shields that are formed through the Geo reaction. And then finally, if you're able to get him, Zhongli paired with the Geo Traveler synergize incredibly well. This is thanks to the way Zhongli's elemental skill works. Basically, when there are Geo constructs on the field and Zhongli uses his elemental skill, it will cause all Geo constructs to pulse and deal AoE Geo damage around the construct. And as the Geo Traveler can create multiple Geo constructs thanks to his elemental skill, or even better, his elemental burst, this combined with Zhongli's elemental skill creates a massive killing field of constant AoE Geo damage, which in all honesty elevates the Geo Traveler to another level. But at the end of the day, the Geo Traveler has many uses, which is why they are sometimes referred to as jack of all trade characters. They kind of have all the basic needs in relation to whatever element they are using, whether it's Geo, Animo, Electro. They all embody what the element is all about. But when you scratch off the surface, you can find there are very unique and niche mechanics behind the Geo Traveler, which for me makes him quite a fun character, and to be honest, currently, at the time of this video, is my favourite element to use with the Traveler. Once you get past the awkwardness of your Geo constructs, you'll find a decently strong character here. On top of that, if you are able to get Zhongli, when the Geo Traveler works in unison with the Geo Archon, it takes the character to the next level in terms of effectiveness and how useful they can be. So there we have it. That is my character guide and overview to the Geo Traveler in Genshin Impact. Now remember, there are multiple ways to play and use the characters in the game, which are one of the many aspects that makes Genshin Impact so enjoyable for me. So at the end of the day, use the characters how you want to use them. These builds are just how I personally like to use the characters, and I hope they help you out in your adventures. So until next time, I've been Darcblade, bringing you a character guide to the Geo Traveller in Genshin Impact. Hope you enjoyed the video, thanks for watching, subscribe and like for more.